Are games becoming more addictive? Absolutely, and it's about to get a lot more complicated. Are you addicted to games? Come on, be honest. Even just a bit?
This is where we all collectively live and dwell and, more importantly, game.
Well, if not you, then probably someone you know. An Iowa State study found that 1 in 10 kids had a pathological attachment to games and played more than 3 hours a day.
Minecraft.
That is the coolest malinformation ever!
And the internet is filled with tons of articles and videos, such as IGN's gaming addiction documentary about World of Warcraft and Cam Adair's stirring but kind of depressing TEDx talk.
For over 10 years, I was addicted to playing video games.
And we're not talking about, hey, I play too many video games on the weekends. Video game addiction can ruin people's lives.
This addiction affected many areas of my life, including being a major influence in my decision to drop out of high school at the age of 15.
If, as Jane McGonigal says, games are the most powerful, transformative medium of the century, then there has to be potential for great harm too, right?
This game is just a disease.
Let's just get this out of the way. Video games are addictive. In fact, that's how they were designed from the very beginning. In the early arcade days, seemingly innocent titles like Pac-Man and Galaga were explicitly created to extract as much money from you as humanly possible. Why do you think they were so hard? But your arcade addiction was limited by one simple thing: quarters, and the fact that your mom had to drive you there. But when games moved indoors with PCs and consoles, the addiction evolved.
I'm inside most of my life, so I don't really notice.
Brutally unbalanced games like Battletoads and Ninja Gaiden still felt like they were designed to extract quarters from you, but they demanded something else: your time. As processing power increased and save points evolved, games became bigger, longer, and more demanding.
God, this is just me failing at this.
And frankly, that's what we wanted.
It's gonna take about 80 hours to beat, you know? I just can't stand that, that's way too short.
And although open world games had existed since the first Age of Darkness, Sega's Shenmue opened the possibility of immersive, responsive environments. Then the popularity of GTA 3 made open world a tacit expectation for all games. Always-on games like World of Warcraft and EverQuest added complex social obligations to never-ending worlds. So it's no surprise that these games were some of the first where people publicly admitted a very genuine addiction.
Instead of spending money, going out and having a good time, I used to spend it on Severin. I couldn't stop playing.
Then on top of all this, social games came onto the scene and added more fuel to the fire. Titles like Farmville and Candy Crush Saga gave designers the tools to extract both time and money from those previously lost non-gaming moments, like when you're on the toilet. Each of these developments in video game history give games a greater possibility for addiction.
I need to get my fix.
But who's the real culprit here? Is it greedy game companies, ravenous gamers looking for bigger, better experiences? Well, I think the answer is our brain. The folks at Extra Credits make the semantic distinction between compelling and addictive, but the physiological chemical response of the brain simply doesn't support that. Neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp says that games trigger the dopamine system of the brain's seeking circuitry, which encourages us to discover new places. And brain scans of excessive gamers match those of addicts. There are even self-reports of withdrawal symptoms for addicted gamers who try to stop.
And I started sweating and I actually started shaking just because I couldn't play it.
Now I know what you're thinking, and you're right. Pleasure alone does not make us addicted. There's a psychological component to all addictions. We're at our most vulnerable when we desire escape and want to feel better about our lives. And games do this in a huge number of ways. They fulfill our goals, give us agency, and delight our brains with puzzles and stories. Super long games like Skyrim are a perfect place to get away from your real world problems. But the difficulty in even talking about video game addiction is that what makes games great also makes them dangerous. And it's about to get a whole lot more intense. Games are studying you to make themselves as irresistible as possible. San Francisco-based data company Playnomics helps game makers create predictive behavioral personalities to tailor game experiences to your distinct desires. And games like The Walking Dead and the new Forza are trying to do the exact same thing with player data. On top of all that, new technologies are collecting information from our own bodies. Valve's Left 4 Dead was scary enough as it is, but if CEO Gabe Newell has his way, skin galvanic response and heart rate collection will be quote-unquote just the beginning. We're moving towards a world where games will be as customized as our DNA and as readily available as the air we breathe. And once you throw Oculus Rift in the mix, games might be more captivating than reality itself. It's gonna be awesome, but it's going to further increase the addictive potential of games, and we can't afford to ignore that. Why? Because if game designers and gamers don't do something, someone else will. Right now, the New York State Legislature is looking to make it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to buy games. And the DSM-5, the official guidebook for the entire psychology profession, is looking to add video game addiction to its next edition, which would give regulators all that they need to control games. Look, games are only going to get more immersive and give you the ability to tune out the world. We're literally putting things on our heads now. The reality is that most people who drink don't become alcoholics, and most people who play games won't become addicts. But we still recognize that alcohol and addictive substances are dangerous. If we're not honest about how powerful these experiences can be, they might get watered down, or worse, taken away from us. And look, I know this gets really complicated. There's personal responsibility, obviously, but there's also the larger issue that games are protected speech as an art form under the First Amendment. This will never be an easy conversation. So what do you think? Are games getting more addictive? Is this actually something we have to worry about? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week. Last week we talked about racism in video games, and you had a lot to say. Let's check it out. To John Blacksod, I agree with you, sort of. I also want my characters to be awesome, but I think we should care at some level who we are playing as. It should actually have some meaning. In some cases it doesn't matter at all, but just to say that like it doesn't matter and that it has no significance, I feel like is missing the point. Teddy Bear 17 mentions Wind Waker and its unorthodox dungeon design. They have brighter dungeons, so a darker skinned character would have shown up quite nicely. Or you could give them a torch. Just saying. Dennis, my last name 16, mentions that developers should be able to make whatever characters they like. And I totally agree with you. And it brings up a really good point that some of you brought up in the comments about the distinction between racism as intent versus racism as a form of power. So as we mentioned in the video, we're not saying that game developers are explicitly like racist people who are trying to keep black people down. Nothing like that. But it does mean that they have a responsibility as creators to respond to things in the outside world. Racism is a part of our history. It defines many, many pieces of our lives. And if games want to prove themselves as an art form, they should reflect that and talk about it. Frelius 15, just want to respond to your last point about imposing the minority's will. That's the thing. It's not a minority anymore. In the United States, there are more children being born who are non-white than who are white. And if you look at gamers, clearly Hispanic and black gamers spend more time playing games than their white counterparts. So really, we're not looking for, something different. We're just looking for equality, I guess. JTA Links blames marketing departments and publishers for not wanting to take creative risks. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's a part of the process. It's also worth noting, we didn't get a chance to mention this in our video, but in our research, we found that more than 85% of game developers are white as well. So the people who are making those decisions aren't necessarily non-white people. So yeah, totally good point. Sin Kamar 16 and others talked about Jinx, who I mentioned as a racist character. It's worth noting, first of all, that we didn't get time to deal with this in the video, but obviously race in Japan is like a huge issue. Perhaps we'll return to it at another time. But it's also worth knowing that we do live in a global culture. Pokemon is a global phenomenon. So whatever Nintendo pushes out is being received by millions and millions of people. And they did end up changing the character, which is really a good thing.